You're listening to WRUU-LP, Savannah, Georgia, 107.5 FM, WRUU.org. We are Savannah Soundings, community radio with global soul.
Check, check, 1, 2. Look like a little country, some rock and roll and blues, 'cause we sure love playing for good people like you. Let me know if you can hear me. Check, check, 1, 2.
Welcome to Music Local and Sustainable, the radio show that features discussions with and the music of local musicians. I am your host, Dave Lake. Tonight we have Jonathan Hill in the studio. You might know him as a rock and blues bass player, but tonight he's in his role as singer-songwriter. Welcome, Jonathan Hill.
Thank you, Dave. Thanks for having me.
It was really interesting to listen to the songs because I heard everything from a song like Dana to a song like Love and Loneliness,
Right.
which could be a great song for, say, Avenged Sevenfold to do as his cover.
Right.
And then you have a song like Hold Me Darlin', which could be country.
Yep.
What's your inspiration?
Whenever I pick up a guitar or instrument, I write to what I have. And sometimes I just feel like I want to play some folk and country, which I love. I love old Americana music and a lot of new Americana stuff. But at the same time, I'm a big fan of punk rock music, and I like distorted guitars. And it's just depending on what the day is and how I feel, how I write that day. I try not to limit myself on what I'm doing. Soon I'm going to put out a CD that's even different than both of those. It's a lot of keyboard and synth pads and drum beats. It's a lot different, but at the end of the day, if I write a song and I like the way it sounds, I just go with it. I'm trying to not wean myself from any certain genre or anything. I sort of like it all. I think that a lot of people these days are that way. They hear music and they like a lot of different styles of music, and sometimes I just don't like to lock myself into, I'm going to do this kind of music forever. Because I know I can't. I just don't have that ability to stay focused on. I can't do just blues, do just country, or do just rock. And I hope that I can get enough from each material that it will come across as a solid thing by itself. But from album to album, they're going to be really different.
How about within an album?
I've been fighting this. Even with this CD that I've put out, I was trying to decide, am I going to go with a mix of the rock and the country and kind of have it layered the way that they flow. But I've had some projects where they're all kind of fit one thing. This one I sort of split up, and I did one that's a very acoustic with upright bass and a little bit of harmonica and acoustic guitar and more of an old country, almost Elvis-y feel and Americana thing. Sometimes it just depends on layering it from song to song. How they flow matters more to me than anything. And if it works to go into a rock song from a country song, I would go with that. But in an album, unless it's written in a way that the album itself is supposed to be more of a storyline, it's more just how it sounds. A lot of times I go through when I'm mixing and mastering and getting all the stuff in an order. I've listened to these songs a million times, it seems like. And you put them in different arrangements and you start hearing them in your head when you're riding around in your car. And sometimes you hear, well, this song flows into this song, or, the way that one song ends and it goes into the other. So that is generally my process.
And it is really interesting, I have to admit, to listen to the same song done two very different ways. And I'm thinking it's Burn the Night Away. You did that at the Songwriter Series.
Yes.
As a acoustic.
As acoustic.
You're the song that made me mad when I was young and all messed up. You're the springtime on the lawn, burning up at the break of dawn. Baby, what you got's exactly what I'm needing. All the time that we would be missing if we turn the night away. Take all my words and put them in your pocket. Just thought that maybe we could rock it, baby, burn the night away. You're the lightning in my blood. Just not sure when I had enough. Don't even try to be alone. Don't you know that you were made to love the morning star that's on the run? Baby, what you got's exactly what I'm needing. All the time that we would be missing if we turn the night away. So take all my words and put them in your pocket. Just thought maybe we could rock it, baby, burn the night away. Baby, what you got's exactly what I'm needing. All the time that we would be missing if we turn the night away. So take all my words and put them in your pocket. Just thought maybe we could rock it, baby, burn the night away.
Thank you.
The other version I've heard some people probably call it punk, but I would simply call it rock and roll.
I would call it rock and roll. My inspiration when I listen to that probably more closely is with something like some of the more rock and stuff Jeff Buckley does. A couple of the songs on the next CD they're going to be fast, but they're not hardcore. They're not growling or anything like that. The messages aren't mean or anything like that. They're still very much about the human condition and different emotions that you feel. And so they might rock and they might be faster and louder. They just might be more rocking.
You're the song that made me mad when I was young and all messed up. You're the springtime all alone, burning up at the break of dawn. 'Cause baby, what you got's exactly what I'm needing.
let's talk about Burn the Night Away. If I heard it right, it's got a line that I really like. Something about "You're the lightning in my blood."
Yeah. You're the inspiration message. It's you're the thing that really gets me going. I feel it in my veins. It's a very powerful feeling. I'm not a wordy person when I write. I tend to have a couple verses, a hook, but I tend to, when I do write things, I like them to be emotive and very descriptive and powerful in that way. Like a thing that people, I think, can relate to. The things that give you a buzz, like give you a whole body buzz. You're the lightning in my blood. It's like that there's something to that power that I hope that it's going to be something not just creative, but something that gets the idea across in a short, fast way, especially sound good. And to me, that line actually is one of the ones that always feels right coming off the tongue to me. And to me, that's a good lyric. When you can hear something like that, when you walk away, you sort of hang on to. I always try to get some lyrics like that and try to arrange them like that.
Now, you've done that for full band as well as doing it more of a solo.
Yeah. I did a show out at Tybee Post Theater, which I love. It's an amazing venue that you can go and do what you want to do. You're not necessarily, nothing against anything down on River Street and a lot of the other places. And I do that 5 nights a week, and I love doing it. But when you go out there, you get to do your stuff and you get to present your show the way you want to do it. And I was lucky enough to get a full band together that spent some time learning it, and it came out great, and I loved it. I really miss sometimes playing electric guitar, and not that I always do all the rock and stuff, but I really do enjoy doing electric guitar and being able to play and sing, do that full band. It's really neat. But some of the venues, and it's that way across the country, the ones that you want to go do your stuff at don't necessarily pay. And that's fine with me because I've got my 5-day-a-week gig. I don't mind saving up and doing a show that's for me, doing what I want to do. And I'd rather go do a 45-minute or an hour set and do it great than do 3 hours covering downtown somewhere. It's one of those things I hope to get out and do that more.
But one of my other favorite lines from this song is, "Take my whole world and put it in your pocket."
Yeah, for living in the moment. So, take my music, take it with you, take my love, and you can carry that with you. So that song's been with me for 15 years. I rediscover it a lot of times. Even now, when I go out and do it acoustic, sometimes I'll learn it in a whole different open tuning or something and play it, and it becomes a different thing. That song has always been one of my favorites.
We think of you as a bass player, but you play quite a few instruments.
Yeah, in the last 10, 15 years, I've done a lot more bass playing live than anything else. I love guitar. I've only dabbled in being a lead guitar. I was in a band several years ago, and I was kind of the main guitar player. But that's not my forte. I'm not somebody that can twiddle a million notes. I've always loved the layers of the guitar and the bass do. I like when basses are very melodic and they work with the guitar. The guitar doesn't necessarily the lead part. The bass can kind of carry the melody, and then vice versa. They kind of cross in and out of each other. I love banjo. I'm very mediocre at banjo, but I love it and I can write to it. And that's what I've been doing a lot of lately, is kind of messing with that. I don't play too much keyboards, but I can write to it. I have a couple songs on the CD that I like that play keyboard on. I think my strength is I play within my means when I try to actually put them as songs. If I have a part where I need a awesome guitar solo, I can call on somebody to come and put a awesome guitar solo. I play both acoustic, 12-string. I grew up playing violin. I'm not any good at it anymore. I keep threatening to pull it out of the closet, and I have a couple times, and it's amazing how fast it comes back. Played that for 8 years when I started at 4 years old, and I was playing in small orchestras and stuff, and that's probably the biggest idiot move I ever did was when I got my teenage years. I was always taking music classes every day, and I kind of rebelled by stopping doing music for a few years and deciding to do the sports and everything. But at some point I'm going to get back into the violin and play harmonica, and that would probably be, if I could just go out and tour and be somebody's harmonica player, I'd probably go do that. I do love playing harmonica a lot. I'm out of practice as much as I play bass these days, but That would probably be one of my favorites for sure, is harmonica. And that's one of those things, I think a lot of people love harmonica, and I love harmonica. But if I pick up an instrument, I'll figure it out, especially fretted instruments now that I've myself taught myself guitar, bass, and the banjo. When you self-learn, especially with the fretted instruments, once you sort of figure out how it all works with movable chords and everything, you sort of can pick up an instrument, any other instrument that's fretted, and start figuring out things that sound good and go, oh, well, this form works, and if this form works here, it works all the way up the neck. And so it gets quicker when you learn those things. When I sit down and write, it's really fun just to kind of have something new that you've never played and go, well, let me figure this out. Even the Love and Loneliness, at the time when I wrote that, I wrote a whole album worth of music. And that's the only one that's really come out that's worthy to be on the album. The other stuff never got words on it. But the tuning that's in is kind of unique. And I just started one day. I was like, I'm tired of playing stuff in standard tuning, and I'm just going to tune my guitar down till something sounds good. And then I'll just start learning it. And now I play that, and it's secondhand as much, that tuning. I don't necessarily know what chords they are until I sit down with another guitar that's in standard tuning, but I write stuff in that tuning because it sounds good. I just like the way that the creative process and taking something that you don't know and creating something out of it. But I can play that tuning now and play a ton of songs in that tuning that I never would have thought I would learn before. I like to just delve into those things and just tune a guitar strange, and if it sounds good, just write something in it. Every songwriter writes a bunch of songs, and not all of them are gold. You got a lot that you end up just going, oh, that was not worth doing. I think it's a daring thing to just go off and write out of your zone. I think a lot of times I've found when I sit down and do that with either a project with a friend of mine or something, when I write out of my zone and his zone and whatever, you come up with something. A lot of times it's really good and it's got energy. A lot of times when you play a song for years and then go and record it, you sort of lose something versus the first time you wrote to that. And it's nice to just write at that time, record it, and play it right then, right when you do it. And I try to do that as much as possible.
Now, when you're recording a song, like the recorded version we have here of Love and Loneliness,
Mm-hmm.
you can tune it any way you want before you do the cut, and
Mm-hmm.
that's fine.
Mm-hmm.
Now, when you perform it live, do you still do the alternative tuning?
Yes, I do. And that's one of the tunings I have to have a separate guitar for, unless I have time. At this point, I've gotten really quick about my tuning in and out of that, because I really love open tunings. And at this point, I play as much in open tunings as I do a standard tuning guitar. I do open G, open D, open E. The one that I do Love and Loneliness in is a CG, CC tuning. After the fact, I've found some songs that are sort of generally in that tuning, or they're really close. And which is always interesting to me, because I'm like, well, somebody else had this idea. You can find a recording that sounds like anything you record these days. I always like when I hear something, I'm like, oh, well, that's sort of like what I did, and I like that too. So it's always good, and it's a beneficial thing, I guess, to hear other people that also come up with those ideas. I play that song, and I have a few other songs that I do out of that tuning. I just haven't really done them out live anytime recently. But when I do, I generally try to keep a few of those together so I can play them all at once in that tuning.
one on the album.
That's the one on the album. Yep. And it's the one with all the stacked vocals and everything like that. That one has my brother on the drums, and I pretty much play everything else. I did the bass. I did 4 or 5 guitar parts on it, and there's 4 or 5 vocals all stacked up together. So it's a whole different thing when you do that versus the acoustic, for sure.
The other thing I'd like to talk about is this alternative tuning. For those who aren't familiar with guitar tuning, what's the standard tuning, and then how did you vary it?
Well, in standard, you have your E, A, D, G, and then a B and a high E. And in mine, I tune down to a C for the E, and then I tune, everything else goes down except for my B string, I tune up to a C. So my low string is C, and then I have a G, which is the 5th, and then I go C, G again, and then the 2 high strings are 2 high Cs, which kind of gives it almost a Eastern sound. And it's got a lot of droning. It almost sounds like a dulcimer. You get a lot of resonant strings that play. So when you're playing things, you end up droning the C a lot, or the G, depending on what you're doing. Even recently, though, I've started learning some finger-picking songs. I do a friend of mine, Mark Malloy's song that I learned in that tuning versus he does it in an open E or something. And I do it in that open C, and I really like it. It's just a different thing. But you always get this low droning bow, bow note. I'm from Mississippi, and there's these guys that do that from North Mississippi, like R.L. Burnside and Junior Kimbrough, that when they play these songs, there's always a note ringing out. And so it gives you that ability to kind of play a separate part along with the note that's staying the same.
Let's go back to a song that I mentioned before, Dana.
Mm-hmm.
What was the origin of Dana?
I was just trying to kind of tell a story and try to put myself in the place of someone. I didn't necessarily write that from a first-person perspective. I've spent a lot of years on the road, and sometimes I tend to write a lot of stuff about being away from home and that whole thing. Hold Me Darling has the same idea. And I think that's where that came from. I can write a few lines that I find very memorable, and then sometimes the rest of it doesn't come to me for another year or two, and all of a sudden the song happens. That song I wrote literally just in 5 minutes, and it all, I was like, oh, well, this all just flows together. Now I changed a few words here and there to make it flow a little better. Originally, I just was jotting down notes for it. It was a simple little "Baby, Don't You Run So Far Away," and I was like, I don't want to just have another song that says "baby." It just sort of seems a little cliche. And how do I make that line memorable? And a lot of times it's using the same consonant sounds. And I was thinking of what can I use instead of baby? I was like, well, it's "Don't Run." I was like, well, the best thing to do is do another D. And I was like, well, Dana is a perfect name for that. And I was like, Dana, don't you? And it just seems to roll off the tongue a little easier. So it's just one of those edit points where you go back and you look at it, and after you've written down words and you're like, well, I think I can write that a little better and make it come out a little smoother and have a life to it. And that's how that happened.
Dana, don't you run so far from here. I need you to come back home to keep me warm in a cold hard night. I need you to stop rolling on. I need you to come back home. Dana, don't you hesitate.
sing for me and you. Dana, if you want your song, I need you to come back home. Dana, won't you call my name? You won't be alone that night. I'll be right by your side. Build a burning, raging fire. Dana, won't you call my name? I need you to come back home. Dana, don't you run so far from me. I need you to come back home. To keep me warm in the cold hard night. I need you to stop rolling on. I need you to come back home.
You're listening to WRUU-LP, Savannah, Georgia, 107.5 FM, WRUU.org. We are Savannah Soundings, community radio with global soul. If you enjoy the programming on WRUU-LP, please support the station with a donation. Basic memberships begin at only $50. Additional membership levels are available, and monthly or recurring donations are welcome as well. To check out our membership rates and to donate to the station, go to www.wruu.org/individual and select your preferred donation level. Again, to donate to the station, go to www.wruu.org/individual. Thank you for listening to and supporting WRUU-LP. You're listening to music local and sustainable, and I'm your host, Dave Lake. Tonight we have Jonathan Hill in the studio.
I've heard an interview with the Wilco's lead singer, and he was like, I try to write songs and stories of stuff, and that's how I've always done it. Sometimes I write a very personal song, and sometimes they're not, and that one was kind of one that it wasn't necessarily from a first-person account, but, I felt it. You still feel it when you write it. You sort of get into that head frame of where the person you're writing from's perspective still is at. It's almost, I guess, maybe like acting or anything is. You got to kind of get in the mindset of what you're writing about. So that's sort of where that song came from.
Yeah, it certainly is from the perspective of a songwriter on the road.
Yeah, that's definitely it.
The lines, I write a song or two that I'll sing for me and you, and that if you want these really songs sung, then you have to come back. Yeah, right. I definitely can relate to what I'm writing about there. It's I spent a lot of years being a poor broke musician out on the road for a week at a time and coming home, and that's a different lifestyle. Especially when you're out doing original stuff, you're playing a lot, and sometimes you make the bill, sometimes you don't. It's a different lifestyle. That you're out and trying to write songs, and you try to write about who you're with, and sometimes you don't, and sometimes you're away, and it's definitely that part has always rung true with me. Same thing with Hold Me Darling. It's very much the same idea, and they're almost become sort of brother sister songs on this album, is because they definitely have the same motifs to me as any of my songs have.
Hold me, darling, so I can go. My wandering spirit keeps me 1 foot out the door. When the road keeps me lonely, I'll think of you all night. So hold me close, darling, and stay with me tonight. I searched and I rambled for a heart so pure. Every time that I leave here, my heart feels so cold. But when I return, dear, my soul is on fire. To walk through the door, dear, and have you in my arms.
And these two would be both on the Green album?
They're both on the Green Lizard CD, yes. And that's the one I have now for sale, which is at CD Baby. If you look up Jonathan Hill, Jonathan, no H, Jonathan Hill at CD Baby, it'll pop it up right up there. And you can tell it's the Green Lizard. It looks like a little green. It's a green cover with a lizard. Looks like he's playing a little bass or something. It looks like a fretted instrument. That's all for sale at CD Baby.
Now, those songs are really the country,
Yes.
the Americana sort of
Yes.
sound.
Yes.
where the Red Lizard will be more the rock and roll.
It'll be more rock and roll. There's some really fast, loud songs on that one. It's not, they're not hardcore like metal or anything. They're just loud and fast, some of them.
Break the chains from around my heart. They held me fast. They cut just like a knife, slow and steady. It's been a while, but I feel fine. Sometimes I shed my skin. Everything comes to an end. Everything starts again, but if I fall before I reach the ground, would you catch me when I'm running down? Pull me up out of the gates of hell. If I fall, would you still be there? It's been a while inside my head. I know that it sounds crazy to stay so far away. I was so close to freedom. I feel alive today. Hell, my heart's still beating. Do it seem alive to you? 'Cause you seem alive to me, but if I fall before I reach the ground, would you catch me when I'm running down? Pull me up out of the gates of hell. If I fall, would you still be there? If I fall before I reach the ground, would you catch me when I'm running down? Pull me up out of the gates of hell. If I fall, would you still be
Lyrically, if you read the lyrics, they're still, they're pretty much about heartfelt things. They're just a little louder and faster with big distorted guitars. Some of those are a minute and a half long and 200 beats a minute, kind of things. But still, at the heart of it, I could still do them acoustically. They're a little different doing them acoustic versus electric versus, just the way they sound.
Well, like everybody will hear on this show, you Burn the Night Away, both as a rock version and the acoustic version. And it is very interesting to hear them both. And you get a very different feeling out of it.
Mm-hmm. That, it just gives a different idea of it. Sometimes the rock stuff can be more about the production of it and how all that stuff works sonically to create a wall of sound that you feel versus when you're listening to a song and you hear the lyrics and when it's broken down, does it still stand on its own? It's definitely a different feel when you do it. Even when you play it when you're on stage, when you do it acoustically, it's a different thing. If you hear 2 guitar amps behind you and a bass amp and full drummer, you feel it differently than when you have to sit there and play it acoustically by yourself. It's a lot more intimate of a thing to yourself personally, I feel anyway.
The Green Lizard is available on CD Baby, and Red Lizard is under production and it will be out soon.
Yes.
Why Lizard?
I was originally not even going to put a title on it, but my brother-in-law did 2 paintings back when he was in college. Now he does advertising, but when he was in college, he was doing art. He did 2 paintings that were companion pieces, and one is cover for the Green Lizard and what will be the cover for the Red Lizard. They're companion pieces, and they've always been hanging on my wall. And it sort of fits with the whole idea of these 2 albums, and a lot of it's is old songs that I've had for years and years, and putting them together, I was like, well, and I just think they look cool as a CD. So one's green and one's red. Well, the red, it's a little more aggressive as a color, and then let's do the Red Lizard as the album cover for the rock stuff, and the green as the acoustic stuff. It sort of fits with the whole idea of the vibe of it to me.
We've talked a little bit about your musical journey. You started classical music.
Okay, when I was 4 years old, both of my parents are music teachers. So they both do music, art, and the sciences. I started when I was 4 playing violin. I started learning Suzuki violin method, and I played until I was about 12, 13, somewhere around that area. and probably getting pretty good. But we did I used to play in small orchestras and go play around the state. I got into all the choruses and small singing ensembles when I was younger. Of course, we always had church. We sang in church. We sang in high school and junior high. But when I got to high school, I sort of got into doing other stuff. I started doing sports, and I kind of got away from music for a couple years until I was about 17. I was playing tennis at the time. I used to play tennis matches in my Driving and Crying shirt with my doubles partner. And we used to go, and they threw out picks that said, "Start your own sort of band." And we had picks night, and I was like, yeah, why don't we do that? They started learning guitar. I started learning guitar all at the same time. So we started playing probably when I was about 18 and got off into college. We really started getting back into music a whole lot, and got heavily influenced by the the rock scene in the 90s. It seemed like every small little college town had a pretty cool little music scene and community. I started out in college in Mississippi. I went to a little small college in Jackson, Mississippi for a couple of years, and then I transferred up to Mississippi State. At the time, there was a nice little music community in the early 90s there with a bunch of really great indie bands. And I lived there for about 4 years and played until I moved up to MTSU, and I finished school up there. And hung around that area for about 4 years, and I wasn't playing so much as learning the engineering stuff, and I had a lot of music. Like our whole house was musicians and recording engineer people, so we definitely played all the time.
And then we talked a little bit about your time being in engineering. Nashville?
Well, I didn't engineer in Nashville except for the stuff I got friends and stuff. I mostly worked for a big studio. I was around big recording, and I helped set the sessions up and the day-to-day workings of the studio, but I wasn't like a head engineer of the studio or anything. But that's one of those things when you're up there, there's a certain osmosis effect when you're around that many good musicians that sort of puts a demand on you to tighten up your own idea of what you're doing, and you start hearing the little wrong things here and there, maybe a little more than you would have before. Like when you hear constantly bands just nail songs perfectly live every time, when you're sitting there in the studio and you hear the same guys play on every single album you hear. I'm not a big fan of a lot of modern country, but those guys walk into a studio, the guys that they hire are amazing. I really enjoyed that time, and I love Nashville. I haven't been back in many years, and I still have a lot of friends that are Grammy award-winning engineers that are good friends of mine that we grew up and went to school together. A lot of them introduced me to new stuff too all the time, the new music that necessarily you didn't always get from media outlets, so that was always fun. But I did a lot of engineering in Mississippi. When I graduated, I moved back to Mississippi, and I was the head engineer at Mississippi State University. I worked all the football games and graduations and all the media things whenever the football coach did interviews and things, all that kind of thing. And some bands here and there, but at the same time I was playing in some bands and doing live sound at some clubs and theater in town there in Starkville. And that's when I really started getting into my own original bands. And I was working for Mississippi State at the time, and I lived around there for about 6 years and played as much as I could and worked. And then, for a long time you would try to look up American Music Supply, but you'd look through there and be like, how can I make a studio? And it would always be, if I could only save up $10,000-$20,000. And it got to point, like, finally that you could get the laptop for cheaper, and the interfaces are a lot cheaper, and they actually did the job. For a long time they didn't really do the job good enough, but there's a point where it finally did. And so I bought all that, and I've been using it ever since. And I've engineered a lot of stuff there, and I even did like wrappers and stuff to make the bills and stuff. I'm kind of over all that nowadays. It's hard for me to even listen to most of it. There's still some good ones out there, but yeah, engineering all kinds of stuff, like whatever I could get my hands on, recording-wise, and then live sound. I always loved mixing bands live. That's a fun thing. I like having my hands on a board. Again, to me, that's a musical instrument as much as having one in your hand on stage. Knowing a room, as a sound person, to me, I think the most awesome thing and easiest thing would be to be a house sound engineer, because then you know the room. It's a lot harder when you go into a new room every night, because everything sounds different, and you have to tweak everything different. Even playing live the way we do, you go into one room and it sounds just utterly, completely different. we play every week at the Bayou down on the river, and to me that room sounds as good as, just live with just your amps and your mics, and their sound as good to me as any room in the town that have bigger sound systems and everything. It's one of the reasons I love the Tybee Post. I think it sounds amazing in there. Like it's really, really nice. And there's a lot of good rooms in town, but I do love when you're in a room that sounds good. I don't know. I guess you get used to it when you're playing that much and you see a bunch of rooms. And you hear a bunch of rooms. I played a bunch of nice venues out of town that don't sound good on stage ever. It might sound great out front. That's a whole different world out front. But on stage sometimes is a whole different thing. Getting that tweaked is a whole discussion of itself. So I did that at Mississippi State, and after that I was in bands, and that led into me moving up to Oxford, Mississippi for a little while. And Oxford's a really great town where Ole Miss is. A whole different community than where Mississippi State is. They're more the agriculture, blue-collar people, like a lot of tech stuff, engineering school. When you go to Ole Miss, it's a bunch of literature people, and there's authors that like go in residency there, like big-time authors. There's an art thing and a lot of good bands out of there. My favorite bands from Mississippi, like Blue Mountain and the R.L. Burnsides, were up around that area. North Mississippi All-Stars were from around there. There was a lot of good bands up in that area. Lived there for a couple years. But I moved back to Nashville, and that's when I worked at the big studio along with 3 other jobs. I had a friend who was an engineer, got me into the ground floor kind of work at the studio, and did that for a few years along with working, and that's when I started playing. And I was in some bands that we did a couple CDs up there, and but I did them all. We did it all, do it yourself, like out of my house in East Nashville, which at the time was a rat-infested, awful place, and now is apparently the biggest, hippest spot to be in the Western civilization, at least for country music. We used to play at this little place called the Five Spot in East Nashville, and at the time you'd go in there and 2 people were there, but now apparently they did a show there or something. It's like the hippest bar in all of Nashville, and I'm like, that's the Five Spot? Like, nobody used to go there. Like, I was the only person who used to go there. It's really crazy. So I kind of got burned out on Nashville. It's as happens when you do that, like 3 jobs. Eventually you get tired of it if you aren't getting some kind of big break. But even the big breaks, I have a friend up there that bartends this day, and he's opened up for Bon Jovi in Sweden in front of 200,000 people, and he still bartends. It's just one of those things. That's just one of those towns. So I moved back to Mississippi and was touring all over. We did trips to like Kansas. We used to go up and do punk rock shows up in Chicago every January. For some reason, we had to go to a friend's birthday. It was January 6th, so we were always in Chicago in blizzards and stuff, and the 1st of January. But it was fun, and I made a little trip for summer out to California to play, and up near San Francisco and San Jose. But out of Mississippi, we're doing a lot of treks. We used to I still play with Eric over in Charleston at Home Team Barbecue. Well, I started playing there 6 or 7 years before I ever even thought about moving here, because we used to drive from Mississippi to go play over there, and that's a great venue. But yeah, we used to do long haul trips. That was the last time I was in one of those situations where, when you're younger, you can be in a band and you got 4 people, all or 5 living in a house together, and you don't have to make that much because you're splitting it up all 5 ways. But there's a point where you get a little older, and you got to find some way to at least find a spot where you can make have a little bit of space of your own. I have a love-hate relationship with Mississippi. I do love Mississippi, and I think a lot of people from there do, but I don't really fit in necessarily. I don't know. It's just sort of one of those things. It can be a little backward there sometimes, but I do love it. I love being out in the country, and where I grew up is utterly rural. It's one of the most rural parts of Mississippi, and that's pretty rural. But then I lived up in Huntsville, Alabama, and I didn't play so much there. Sort of, I did a little bit, but mostly I just worked for a couple of years around there and did a little playing and recording, and then I got this job offer out at Armstrong. I moved down here looking to do that and do a little sound engineering, and at the same time I was looking to get back playing. When I moved here the first year, I sort of didn't play much at all. But when I moved here, I did a lot of research to see that there was a lot to do and a lot of places to play. So when I got here, I did a few rounds around some of the jam nights and open mics and stuff, but I mostly worked really early in the morning. About a year after I moved down, I started finding some people to play with, and I started doing both, doing the nighttime and the daytime gig. But there's, again, a point where you get old enough to where waking up at 5:30 in the morning after being out at 1:30 or 2 in the morning every night just doesn't get as appealing anymore. I don't know if it ever was appealing, but your body doesn't let you recover like that anymore. So I was playing with 2 or 3 other people, and Eric needed the bass player, so I jumped on board because I needed to get out of doing the daytime job a little bit. It's been really good to me. I've been able to play a lot, and I tell that to every bass player I meet. I'm like, you should move to Savannah because there's always work for bass players and drum in this town. There's just a lot of work. I plan on being here for a while, and hopefully this will be my base operation for a while. I never know what the future holds. I like a lot of places. And that's another thing when you travel as a musician, you realize there's a few places you're like, I don't really like that place. But, most cities are a lot alike, and they have a lot of similarities, when you travel through a lot across the country. And people are generally the same in most cities and everything. But this one has a special little thing to me, and especially with the music community and the ability to play as much as you can. Even if you're playing 2 nights a week, like that's better than a lot of people in a lot of cities. It's really conducive to people being able to play and being good. Because at the end of the day, if you play 3 hours every night in town, you get a lot better. That's practice time also. When you play 3 hours a day, you get better. There's just no question about it. There's no better practice than playing in front of people live every night of the week. So I definitely feel I've gotten better. And I think it's conducive for everybody around. I think everybody that does that, there's some fantastic musicians in this town. Wholeheartedly believe that. This is about the same size as Huntsville. And I liked Huntsville for some reasons, but as a nightlife town, it doesn't even hold a candle to this place. And musician-wise, doesn't hold a candle to this town because there's just opportunity to play here. There's more venues. There's more opportunities. More some of these venues have people play 2 different sets a day, and then other than like a Key West or something like that, there's not very many cities that have that. It's pretty unique. And that's about it. I'm, constantly trying to play and make a living. That's again, it's just Guitar Man. Where can I get if I'm wandering around the U.S.? That's what I do. Is I'm gonna find some place that I can do what I do and make a living at it. And so far, so good in this town. It's like I can make a living and do what I do, and that's awesome to me. I'm not having to wash any more dishes. I'm not having to serve any more food. I'm doing what I want to do, and that's a great thing.
Yeah. Well, we're glad you came to Savannah.
Yeah, well, I am too.
Well, tonight we've had Jonathan Hill in the studio. We've learned a lot about the fact that he's a wonderful singer-songwriter from a variety of genres, and much more than just our blues bassist. So thank you so very much for coming into the studio tonight.
Thank you so much, Dave.
This has been another edition of Music Local and Sustainable, and I've been your host, Dave Lake. Save this time for another show next week.
Well, I know we ain't headed for the Hall of Fame. Gonna give it what we got, man, that ain't no shame. Let me know if you can hear me. Check, 1, 2. Let me know if you can hear me. Check, 1, 2.